So, what's a parable? A parable is a short story that teaches moral and spiritual lessons. This is according to Merriam-Webster dictionary. Then, now, what's Jesus' definition of parables? We find this if we go to Matthew chapter 13, verse 10. Verse 10 to 17. It starts with the disciples asking on verse 10, and the disciples came and said unto him, why speakest thou unto them in these parables? And Jesus answered and said unto them, because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. Verse 12, for whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance, but whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away, even that he hath. Verse 18, therefore speak I to them in parables, because they see not, and hearing hear not, neither do they understand. Verse 14 then goes on and says, and in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, and said, by hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. Verse 15, for this people's hearts is wax gross, and their ears dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their hearts, and should be converted, and I should heal them. Verse 16, but blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which see, and have not seen them, and have heard things which ye hear, and not have heard them. So, whilst reading this, you can easily get confused. Is he answering the question? Is he giving another parable? What is Jesus trying to say here? But the question has been asked, why do you speak in parables? But when you look closely, Jesus is saying, the text had been written, scripture was there, scripture was spoken of, but yet people did not see, people did not see the fulfillment of scripture, and people did not hear the word. But it was there. They seemed to see, but they did not perceive of what they saw. So here he's saying, I use parables to simplify. He gives a relatable story to things that are complicated, so that our minds that do not see when we see can understand the things that we haven't seen. So this was Jesus trying to explain what a parable, was explaining what a parable is. So this is what we're going to be doing for the next quarter. We are going to be going in depth, studying these parables, dissecting them, seeing what every piece of what Christ's short stories was all about. And from there, we're going to draw lessons that will help us as Christians and also help us address some of the social issues we are going through and some of the Christian issues we go through in our lives. So this quarter, our theme is stories at the master's feet. Last quarter we had biblical leaders. This quarter we have stories at the master's feet. So today's topic is the speck and the log. This is a common story because of how relatable it is, especially in today's life. We're gonna see how, and we'll talk a bit about it. I'll present something, then we'll discuss further after my presentation. So just to give you an idea where we are going, this picture kind of demonstrates what a speck in one's eye and a log in another's does. So our parable, Matthew chapter 7, verse 1 to 5. We'll start with verse 1 and 2. Verse 1 starts by saying, judge not that ye be not judged. Verse 2, for with what judgment ye judge, ye be judged, and with what measure ye made, it shall be measured to you again. Now this this is kind of a difficult way to start a chapter. And from there, you'll be wondering, what is Christ talking about? But now with the background we have of parables, we can see he's addressing a social issue that's there in the time of Israel and which is still there today. Christ is saying, judge not, that ye may not be judged. For whatever judgment you pass, you should expect to receive the same measure of judgment that you give. Verse 3 then goes on and says, and why beholdest thou that mote that is in thy brother's eye, and cast it and consider it not the beam that is in thy own eye? So now we have a build up from verse 1 to verse 3. Verse 1 is saying, judge not, for you not to be judged. Verse 3 is saying, if you judge, expect the same measure of judgment. Then verse 3 then says, why do you consider removing a speck in your brother's eye? Here they use a mote in a brother's eye when you have a beam in your own eye. Now, we can now start to have an understanding of where this parable is going. What is Christ trying to say? Why was Christ saying, do not judge, for you not to be judged? It is easy for one to judge someone because of what they have seen. It's easy for you to see the speck in someone's eye or the mote in someone's eye than to see the beam that is in yours. It is easy for us as Christians to judge a brother or a sister on the little things or the little mistakes, or when they fall short of the glory of God in some little way, and judge them just because we can see it. But then we fail to see our own mistakes and our own sins. And we concentrate so much on judging. Here's the thing, judging is different from rebuke. It is good to rebuke a brother when a brother sins or a sister sins, but it is not good to judge. The Bible even goes to say the only judge is God, because he's the only one who's righteous, and he's the only one who can give fair judgment. Our judgment is always biased because it's coming from a sinful heart. But when I rebuke a sister or rebuke a brother, that's okay. But the moment I start to judge them, then we now have a problem, because judgment has to come from a pure heart. But us as humans, we cannot, because we look at the small things whilst we don't look at ourselves as the sins that we also hold in our lives. Verse 4 says, "Oh, how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thy own eyes." Now, he's now giving an example, a realistic example. It is difficult to correct something when your vision yourself is obscured. The reason why we cannot give good judgment on things is because our own visions are obscured by the sins that we do. We are not pure in heart for us to make those decisions. So when we try and judge our brothers and sisters without ourselves being pure, we are obstructed from the full picture that gives that judgment of love that God is. God judges with love. But because of our sinful nature, we have those logs in our heart that when we are judging other people, we judge them without getting the full picture. How many times in church or in our social lives where somebody can come and correct you, yes, but they're not correcting to help you. They are correcting to shame you, because that love is not there, right? So here he is saying, how can you say to your brother, let me pull out a mote out of their own eye, and behold a beam in one's eye? I was looking at a picture description of verse 4, of a man trying to pull out a small mote in someone's eye, whilst with a beam in his own eye. He could not focus, he could not get to that small mote because that beam in one's eye was obstructing. So basically, there's a symbolism here which is going on, where instead of helping, you end up hurting the person you're trying to help because of the obstructions that are in your own life, which is the sin that you are not addressing in yourself when you're trying to address a sin, not even address, you're judging someone because of what they have done. Verse 5, the end of the parable ends saying, "Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thy own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly and cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye." Like I was saying, in order for us to help each other in this Christian life, we have to remove that beam that's in our own eyes. We have to be in a place that is good with God. We have to have that pure heart that's willing to help with love, not judgment. And when we have that now, we can now remove the small motes in our brothers and sisters' eye, because our eyes are not obscured. We can see the full picture. We can help our brothers. We're now helping with love, not with wanting to shame or cast out, or so many times there's an example back home when at my home church we had this discussion, both parents and youths, and most of the youths were saying, yes, we might be wrong in the way we do certain things, but the way certain adults try and help is not helpful, because you might talk about the sins that we have done, but you're not helping us. All you end up creating is a division. And we see this so many times in our own congregations, where you're trying to help a brother and sister, but because you're not coming from a place of a pure heart, you drive them away. Because you're not coming from a place of a pure heart, you are hurting them more. You are literally creating a barrier between them and Christ. That block, that beam in your eye is becoming a barrier between them and God when you're trying to help them, because you're doing it from a place of judgment, of hypocrisy. That's why here verse 5 is saying, "Thou art hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of your own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly and cast out the mote in a brother's eye." Because this is a very short parable, there's not much to talk about, but I'm going to add with a realistic thing that happened. We find this in John, if we can go together, John chapter 8. It reads, "Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, and when they had sat in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act." They emphasized, this woman was taken, this verse 4, saying unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act, so she was caught red-handed. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This was now them trying to tempt Jesus to see how Jesus would react. In verse 6, they say, this is, they say, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he had them not. Verse 7, so when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone to her. And again he stood down and wrote on the ground. And they which had it began being convicted of their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. So this was a practical illustration of what Jesus was talking about in Matthew chapter 7, where we have Christians I would use, yes, Pharisees or self-righteous people or us people with the logs or the beams in our own eyes. Yes, we might catch our brothers and sisters red-handed doing things they're not supposed to, but it is not our job to condemn them. It is not our job to judge them. It is not our job to shame them. Our job is to love them. Our job is to help them correct their mistakes. Our job is to help them in love. That's our job. And this is what Christ did here. He said, even I, Christ was perfect, remember, but he said, even I, without sin, will not condemn you. Go and sin no more. This is what we are supposed to tell our brothers and sisters. We should help them to sin no more. Not judge people, not try and shame people, not try and be hypocrites. We should help each other in love. And this is what Christ did with this woman. Every person falls short here and there. It is not good to fall short of the glory of God, but we do fall short of the glory of God. And we are all striving for perfection, and we are all striving for righteousness in our different ways. We have our own different struggles that we are struggling with. We should always remember that before we judge someone's struggle, because as much as they are struggling, they are fighting to be righteous as well. It is not our job to condemn anyone because we are not perfect. Like Christ is saying, if you are perfect, cast the first stone. So this is the end of my presentation. From now, we can now just add what we think, discussion points that we have, and and questions, and we discuss from there. Any questions or additions, subtractions? I know we have a few today, so those that are shy of raising their hands or contributing, there's a more comfortable setting. Melinda, what do you think about this parable in Matthew chapter 7?
Personally, I think it's really straightforward. Like this thing of judging others, but I seem to have. I don't know if I don't know the difference between rebuking and judging. If it's me or it's not me, because it seems like every time I try to do those things, someone will tell you, "Don't judge me." And when a person I'll be thinking would say, I'm rebuking, then someone will say you are judging me. So maybe if you can try and clarify, I want to understand the difference between rebuking. Maybe it's me. I can't say people always, because at the end of the day, there are some people who hide behind rebuking, These people, mostly of the world, they always hide behind that word. And the moment they tell you, you feel like you are wrong and to just let it be. But I'll be having like a good intention of correcting, but then someone will say you are judging me.
I think the best example I can give to separate the two is the one I use for myself is if I come to you, Melinda, and let's say rebuke you of something you have done, but I don't give you a way forward or a way to change, then I'm gonna come out as if I was judging you. Because I just came to your face. Literally, all I'm doing is telling you that I know what you did, but I'm not giving you a solution to your problem. So I think that's the difference between judging. With Christ, we can see even when you whipped people in the temple, you told them why he was whipping them. You are wrong, but he didn't end there. You told them, this is my father's house, and my father's house is to be treated like this and that. So rebuking does not just end at telling someone that you have a speck in your eye, but then it tells them how not to have it and how to take it out and give that love and help. Like Christ, yeah, he didn't just end up by saying, yeah, so you were caught doing adultery, but then he told her what to do next. Go and sin no more. So from there, that's a sign of love. I believe judgment usually doesn't come with that aspect. It's more of condemning than rebuking. Judgment is more of condemning. It's like putting an end to. It's just like law. I'm not so good in law, but let me use this example where if a judgment is passed, it's set in stone. If I call you a sinner, you are a sinner. That's judgment. You are a sinner. But then if I tell you you sinned, but don't do this and this and that, avoid this and this and that, it then helps you as a person.
Okay.
That's not judgment. But if I just end by saying, you sinned and don't give you help after that, then there's no love in what I was saying. And that's just judgment and condemnation. I don't know if that kind of helps.
Yeah, it does. But sometimes people hide behind judgment, I don't know if you face that. Even when someone knows that you are really not judging them, but I think that's what people now do. And they actually quote the verse.
Yes, of course. People have the tendencies to hide behind scripture, even when it doesn't support them, just because literally it seems like it's supporting them, because they don't want to get out of what they are doing. But a person, for example, this woman we just read about, when she was told what she was caught red-handed, she couldn't refuse what she had done. But when Christ said, "Go sin no more," she didn't go and sin again. She didn't argue with Christ and say, but this and that. No, she just stopped what she was doing and went and sinned no more. So I think people also have to stop hiding behind misusing scripture, basically, or misinterpreting scripture to benefit themselves. Scripture is scripture. It will never change to suit what we want. It says what it says, and we should just obey it that way. But that also doesn't mean that we should stop helping our brothers and sisters when they fall short. We should continue to tell them when they do wrong, but we should say it in a way of love and acknowledgement that we can all make mistakes. If we do that, even the delivery of what you say is better. We can look at David. When David sinned, when the prophet came to him, he addressed him in a way that was respectful, in a way he would understand, in a way David could see that what he had done was very wrong. In that way, I don't think anyone who's normal and still respects God and has the Spirit of God in them would say you're judging me if you come out to them like that. So, yeah.
Okay, I understand.
All right, let me see if there are any other questions. We're now only 3. Welcome, Mr. Tobayo. We're talking of judging and not judging in Matthew chapter 7, verse 1 to 5, which talks on do not judge, for you shall be judged. Do not be a hypocrite and try to remove a speck in one's eye when you have a beam in yours. First cast out the beam in yours and then help your brother. As well as also you should rebuke in love, not condemn in judgment. So I know you just arrived, but I know you're versed in this. I don't know if you have anything you'd love to share from your knowledge of this piece of scripture.
Let me just get my bearings. I'll get back to you.
All right. Also, I think another aspect when it comes to rebuking, where this beam in our eyes kind of hinders us from giving that rebuking with love, is not understanding the other person where they're coming from. Certain norms we grow up with or we have had, and because of that, sometimes we our vision of the real picture is obscured, and sometimes we then judge people instead of helping them because we're not seeing the full picture. So sometimes, actually all the time, before you think of condemning or judging someone, first listen to them. First hear them out. Hear what they have to say. And from there, you can help someone. Because after sometimes looking at something, you can just come up with your own conclusions. But after listening to someone, you can really understand where their struggle is coming from. And you can now come up with a way of helping them. Because when you listen to someone, you also relate to some of the things they say. And you being human and also knowing that you fall, you then can have a good judgment on how you can help someone else.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is judgment on the part of the person who is giving this correction, or on the
Sorry, you said is judgment on the part of?
is judgment on the part of the person who is correcting, or on the person who is receiving correction, who perceives that what is being said is now judgment?
I would love to say the person receiving it can feel that this is judgment. This is not rebuking. This is judgment. This is condemnation. I'm being condemned here. So I would say the person at the receiving end will perceive what you do as judgment because of your delivery, what you say, and how you say it, and where it's coming from.
Okay. It's now because if I have good intentions, but I'm generally a blunt person and I don't sugarcoat things, and then I approach you in a certain way that may not necessarily feel like it's constructive to you.
I think in that way, it's now more of the problem is now with the receiver. It's not with you, the gift, because like we were discussing when we started, is your rebuking should come from a place of pureness, should come from a place of love. So if that all is coming, for example, it's not every time you're gonna get a rebuking you like. It's not every time you're gonna get a rebuking like the one David got, where it came nicely, with all those. Sometimes you're gonna get a lashing and a beating, like the people in the temple, like what Jesus did, the example I gave earlier, of he beat people up, he threw things, he turned tables and all. That wasn't sugar coated. He was angry, right? But it was coming from a place of what? Of love and respect, in the sense that it didn't end by just telling people, don't sell in the house of God, don't do this. He said why. So I think that why part sometimes is probably the significant part we leave out. Because if someone understands why you are telling them what they're doing is wrong, then if they continue then say you judged me after you showing concern, then it's no longer a thing of them perceiving judgment on your side, but it's now them not wanting to get out of the sin that you were rebuking them of. I don't know if that explains it.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I just read a meme
Okay.
that was written, stop secretly competing with your friends. It's disgusting.
Okay.
So now, my question, now is, if we look at in verse 5, it says, "Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam in thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye." Um,
You muted yourself.
I'm saying, can we say that some friendships are not necessarily building, but they are, in essence, trying to find out what is wrong with the next person, or using someone else as a benchmark to better yourself? Confidence boosters, maybe.
Yeah, I think it may relate to the point I said earlier on I think it's verse 1 and 2 when he's talking on judging and judgment, receiving judgment and all that, where sometimes you know when you're trying to help someone, Tobiah, is it's really coming from a pure heart. You really want to help someone. But then sometimes there are people who not wanting to help, but wanting to shame you so that they look good. So yeah, so sometimes people are just looking for debt so that they can, like the example we're giving of the woman who was caught red-handed. They're like, okay, we caught this woman red-handed, so we are justified to condemn her to death. That kind of thing. So it's more of looking for debt to destroy the other person, to condemn the other person, not to be constructive and help that person. So yes, I'd say there are relationships like that, friendships like that, of people who are just there to better themselves by shaming other people or casting out other people.
I feel like Sister Melinda has something to say.
Okay. Personally, I think before you do it, you deep inside you should know if it's judging or it's rebuking, because you need to understand the motive. No, there's always a motive. The moment you approach someone and you feel like you want to look better on them, then that's wrong. And then if you feel like you are helping, and we need to understand that God actually searches hearts. You can't fool God. You can fool someone, but you can't fool God. And if you understand that part, that whatever I feel inside me, don't even try to lie to yourself. If it's trying to make yourself look better, then it's wrong. Just don't even go there. Don't even try and do it, because your heart will never even lie to you. Like, you feel it that my motive is wrong or my motive is what is right. I think personally that's the only way you'd understand that I'm doing this for correction, or for me maybe to look better, or for that person to look bad, for points or anything like that. Because your deep inside will never even lie to you. You might lie to yourself, but you need to understand that God also searches that, and God knows what motive do you have to approach that person and maybe try and correct them or anything like that. The people who always hide behind "you are judging me," they really use that verse so much every time you try and correct them. But as long as you know that the motive is right, then, like what we want to say now, you have done your part, and at the end of the day, you give everything to God.
Yeah, I think that sums it up on the person, on the giver, that you yourself knowing that you also fall short and your human tendencies of saying things out of a wrong motive are high. Sometimes it's good to ask yourself first before you give that correction. Why am I giving this correction? Because if you if you are able, I think this is where verse 5 comes in, where it says, if you're able to take that beam out of your own eye before you approach someone, it might not necessarily be what you're struggling with, the sins you're struggling with, but it can just be that judgment that's obscuring you from the full picture. If you can take that out from the very goal before you approach someone, then you can clearly, easily remove the mote in your brother's eye because you can see well. You don't have that human tendency that wants to judge and condemn, obscuring what you want to do. So asking yourself first before doing things, I think that's a brilliant thing to do. It helps you come up with how do I approach, it also makes you think that, okay, I've seen this, but how do I help? Because at the end of the day, it's how do you help your brother and sister? How do you make them come closer to God? So our rebuking shouldn't just end on that judgment of, I saw what you did, but it should go further and show love. Shannon, want to say something?
I would like to say that the moment we talk of correcting someone, then totally I think there it's wrong because no one likes to be corrected. So when you take it as you're correcting someone, you most probably offend them. So if you would rather take it as I'm helping, not as if I'm correcting, because if I'm correcting, that means I'm correct and you're wrong. So if we take it as correcting someone, they are most likely to take it as in a bad way. But if you take it as I'm helping you, I'm also helping myself, I can also help you. I think that's all.
Okay, so that addresses that approach issue of you clear the way of it's now showing that love approach of coming to someone to help, not necessarily to say out what they did. Was it Toba or Melinda wanted to say something?
Oh, I want to say we need to also normalize correcting our friends too, because I've realized every time we talk about these topics, people always think of people are like so far away, people you don't even know, people you don't even talk to, and then you forget the people who are close to you. I've also heard people talking statements like, "Your friends don't like her. If they do, they will tell her that what she's doing is bad. They are fake, you know." That's because as people we don't normalize correcting our friends because we feel like we could lose them, you know, you lose that friendship, and then you just your friendship is just based on maybe lying to each other, even if you know that this is wrong or stuff like that. But I think true Christianity is like there's no boundary, there's no like a line that you feel like you shouldn't cross. You should always, if you have a friend who you know that what they're doing is bad, try telling them. You might lose them, but if it's God is proud of what you did, then it's okay at the end of the day. Just normalize correcting people who are so close to you.
Yeah, that's true. We don't usually correct the ones that are close to us, and we correct those that are far. So charity has to begin at home with those that are closest to us, and we build from there.